My name is Xavier Roberts, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. It's another terrific afternoon to appraise the world view today. On our top stories, wave of Russian airstrikes on cities across Ukraine, including Kiev, leaves at least 19 people dead. Rival factions of Sudan's military agreed to renew three-day ceasefire shortly before it was due to expire. 2020 election. The details of these stories and more in a moment. Ukraine, including Kiev, has left at least 19 people dead. 17 people, including a child, were killed in an attack that hit a block of flats in the central city of Uman, according to officials. And a woman and her 3-year-old daughter were killed in the city of Dnipro. This is also according to a news agency said Russia was aiming for the reserve units and used high-precision weapons on Friday. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the apartment block was among 10 residential buildings at hospital treatment. Zelensky said the attacks showed further international action needed to be taken against Russia. In the meantime, Russian authorities have denied detained U.S. journalist Ivan Gechkovich a consular visit. The foreign ministry in Moscow said this yesterday. Gechkovich, aged 31, a reporter with the Wall Street Journal, was detained last month on espionage charges. He denied refused to grant visas to a group of Russian reporters, a move Moscow called provocative. The reporters were supposed to travel to New York to cover Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's visit to the UN Security Council. The Russian Foreign Ministry described the decision to deny the visas as an act of sabotage. It said the U.S. had denied the visas to impede normal UN Security Council meeting, so the denial of visas for Russian journalists to cover his presence there has particularly angered Moscow. Lavrov said Russia would neither forgive nor forget the U.S. for the decision, and his deputy Sergei Ryabkov told state media that Moscow will find formats to respond to this so that the Americans remember for a long time that such things must not be done. The country since he became Pope 10 years ago. What kept him away was the tough anti-migrant stance of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, in contrast to the 86-year-old pontiff's compassion for all refugees. What brings him here now, besides his support for Catholics, is the war in Ukraine. Hungary and Ukraine share a 134 kilometers border, but unlike other EU leaders, Orban has refused to ban 2019 to Romania and 2021 to Slovakia. On his way to Slovakia, he stopped for several hours to celebrate Mass in Budapest, the closing event of the International Eucharistic Congress. Still on the news from the Vatican, the Pope will for the first time allow wills announced on Wednesday will give 5 religious sisters voting rights at the Synod, which is a papal advisory body. In the past, women were only allowed to attend the gathering as observers. Now men will still cast the majority of the votes at the influential gathering. Nevertheless, the reforms are seen as a significant shift for the Roman Catholic Church, which has been male-dominated for centuries. The US-based Women's Ordination Conference, which advocates for women priests, has called the reform a significant crack in the stained glass ceiling. Away from that, now the U.S. has announced plans to open new migrant processing centers in Colombia and Guatemala as legal migration expanded. The number of deportations for those ineligible to be in the U.S. will also be doubled or tripled. Now, the U.S. is bracing for a spike in undocumented immigration when COVID-era processing rules end in May. The processing centers will allow successful applicants to enter the U.S. 1,000 people are expected to be processed a month, but this will be scaled up. Now, Spain and Canada have also agreed to take a number of those applying. U.S. officials on Thursday also announced plans to double or triple the number of deportation flights to some countries. Former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has testified as part of a criminal investigation into alleged efforts by Donald Trump to overturn his defeat in the 2020 election. Pence, aged 63, sat for more than 7 hours before a federal grand testify under oath earlier this year. The questioning by prosecutors took place behind closed doors. His appearance on Thursday came just hours after an appeals court rejected a last agreed to renew a 3-day ceasefire shortly before it was due to expire. The extension for another 72 hours follows extensive diplomatic efforts by neighboring countries, as well as the US, UK, and UN. But there are continuing reports of heavy fighting in the capital, Khartoum. The previous truce allowed thousands of people to attempt to flee to safety. Instead, the ceasefire had been expected to end at midnight local time on Thursday. Meanwhile, the Turkish evacuation plane coming into land at an airbase outside Sudan's capital, Khartoum, has been fired at. Turkey's defense ministry confirmed this. No one was injured and it landed safely at Wadi Saidna, where it was being checked. Sudan's army blamed paramilitary fighters for firing at the aircraft and damaging its field. Now in Vietnam, police have arrested 65 people for smuggling 50 kg of drugs, some hidden in toothpaste tubes, into Vietnam. It follows last month's arrests of 4 Vietnam Airlines cabin crew found with the tubes in carry-on bags after a flight from Paris to Ho Chi Minh. Vietnam is a major drug trafficking hub despite having some of the harshest drug laws in the world. About half of the 327 toothpaste tubes the flight attendants were transporting contained drugs. Investigators said the women were unaware of their contents, and they are currently out on bail. It was the biggest demonstration of its kind yet. Plans include curbing the Supreme Court and giving the government control over the appointment of judges. The nation demands a judicial reform, was the repeated cry from the crowd. Israelis are deeply split over the proposals, with huge weekly protests against them over the past 4 months. After the break, we have reports on the demise of 79-year-old Jerry Springer, the TV presenter best known for his raucous talk shows. So stay with us for details on
issues affecting the common Nigerian.
From issues on politics,
hello Nigeria, I remain committed.
Security,
education, health,
lifestyle, and so much more. Join Janice Kobum and Uyai Anyeken
every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Now, Spain. The record figure was reached in Cordoba airport in southern Spain just after 3 p.m. local time. For days, a blistering heat wave has hit the country, with temperatures 10 to 15 degrees Celsius warmer than expected for April. Away from that, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has suspended election campaigning after he fell ill during a live TV interview in which the broadcast was abruptly brought to a halt. After a 20-minute break, he returned to say he had serious stomach flu after 2 days of intense campaigning. Erdogan, aged 69, is facing his toughest election campaign so far. The main opposition leader, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has been chosen to run for a group of 6 political parties. He was among a number of opposition leaders to wish the president a speedy recovery. Now, away from that, the Philippine Coast Guard (PCG) has said 2 of its vessels engaging in dangerous maneuvers at Second Thomas Shoal, a long-running flashpoint between the 2 countries. The PCG said in a statement today that the first incident occurred when the Chinese Navy ship crossed paths with the Coast Guard boats 7 nautical miles, that is 13 kilometers from Pagasa Island on April 21. The rock in the disputed Spratly Islands, also known as Thitu Island, was occupied by the Philippines in the 1970s, and it suggested that failure to comply might cause a problem. Meanwhile, Iran's army has said it seized a Marshall Islands flagged oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman after it collided with an Iran flagged oil tanker was seized by the Iranian Army's naval force in the Persian Gulf after it collided with an Iranian boat in the Gulf of Oman and tried to flee. It added that 2 members of the boat's crew Gulf of Oman in international waters. Also, in a statement issued earlier, the U.S. Navy had said Iranian naval forces had seized as the Indian Supreme Court continues to hear petitions seeking to legalize same-sex marriage. It is reportedly becoming evident just how complex that concepts of marriage had changed over time, and that denying them the right to marry violated the Thursday, speaking on behalf of the government, which has strongly opposed marriage equality for the LGBT of marriage, and the court has no right at all to hear the matter. Now, in business, the U.S. economy slowed in the first 3 months. The Commerce Department said that was down from a rate of 2.6% in the prior quarter, despite strong prices. The latest report on gross domestic product, the widest measure of economic activity, showed the economy has now grown for 3 quarters in a row. Now, in entertainment, French actress Eva Green has won a high court case over her after the film collapsed amid a bitter dispute with producers. The ruling follows a trial in January, at which text messages in which Green called one producer a moron and another evil were revealed. White Lantern claimed her unreasonable demands derailed the film. A patriot, Judge Justice Green ruled that the 42-year-old actress was entitled to her fee and dismissed White Lantern's counterclaim. Meanwhile, Ed Sheeran sang and played guitar to a New York jury at a civil trial, performed parts of the song in question, Thinking Out Loud. Hayes of Gay's co-writer are claiming that he stole elements of the chart-topping hit, but in court, Sheeran cradled a guitar as Gay's legendary 1973 R&B hit. He told the jury how his 2014 song was written at his home in England with friend and collaborator Amy Wedge. He said the process began during a brainstorming. And finally, on Worldview today, Jerry Springer, the TV presenter best known for his raucous talk shows, has died aged 79. The Jerry global audience. His publicists confirmed to media that Springer died peacefully on Thursday at his home in Chicago. Gene Galvin, a friend of Springer's and spokesman for the family, described him as irreplaceable. Meanwhile, broadcaster Piers Morgan described Springer as a TV icon and such. And our package for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. My name is Xavier Robert, reaching you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, and you've been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.